and welcome to this webinar. Welcome to this webinar on tearing down the straitjacket, reimagining beauty and fashion in the 21st century. Thanks a lot for your company. And as we take a whirlwind tour of the intellectual and cultural paradigm of beauty, the economic stratagem associated with fashion, how that has manifested itself historically, the socio-psychological repercussions of our contemporary obsession with fashion and emerging alternatives to the straitjacket of fashion, why and how it is being torn down, and finally, what the future looks like as we begin, finishing the first quarter of this century, which has been marked by rapid developments in social media, influencers, and whatnot, and all the pressures that have accompanied that development. So, and so we're going to do that in 1 hour, and nobody can really accuse of any dearth of ambition. We'll be crossing, we'll be going across a lot of territory, and and obviously, when you're talking about fashion, you have to do it with Italians. And so there are 2 Italian friends who are going to be guiding us through this journey. And so welcome to Alessandra and to Dario and to my colleague Pooja in Bangalore. And Pooja, over to you. You will now explain to us what this process will look like. And you'll also briefly introduce us to Alessandra and Dario. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Pallav, and welcome, everyone. It's so good to see you here. So as Pallav said, this conversation is going to be about fashion and beauty, and we're going to take a historical dive. We're going to look back at how we've come to the point of crisis where we are at, where we have an industrial model of fashion that is causing the climate, that is contributing to the climate crisis, the pollution crisis. And while we look at the historical analysis, we're also going to look at alternatives. We're going to look at what other emerging processes are happening in Italy, but also around the world. And we have 2 incredible speakers with us here today, Alessandra and Dario. So Alessandra works as an independent sustainability consultant. She is based in Switzerland, and she draws over 16 years of experience within the fashion industry. So Alessandra transitioned from working in the fashion industry to a solopreneur role, and she works with organizations to pave a path forward towards a more sustainable future. Welcome, Alessandra. And we also have Dario here, who is a textile entrepreneur in Torino, in Italy, and he is affiliated with the knitwear brands Osalito and Natural. He is the founder of the Slow Fiber Network, and prior to him returning to his family business and expanding it, he was a professor of public law from 1999 to 2013. So welcome to you, Dario. We're so grateful to have the 2 of you here. Just some logistics announcements. This session is being recorded, and we will share the recording with everyone after the session, and we will also upload it on our YouTube page. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. There will be a short Q&A at the end, the last 10 minutes, where we would love to just field the questions that you have and offer them to our panelists. So welcome, and I'll hand it back to you, Pallav.
Thank you, Pooja. So 15 months ago, Alessandra, you got in touch with us. Your outreach sort of challenged us, and something which we would not have been comfortable with earlier. was made comfortable simply because of the extensive experience and background that you had in fashion. And we took the plunge and we decided we'd do something about fashion. And you wrote 3 articles for us. We did a comic book. Then we also were introduced to Dario, and eventually we never took our eyes away from the possibility of this webinar. And here we are with the webinar. But tell us briefly, you were an insider in fashion, and then you decided, because of some compulsions, the compulsions which come from one's own heart and mind, and which propel us in a direction which sort of allows us freedom to emerge out of wherever we may be. And that's what probably happened with you. Could you tell us about that journey? How did you manage to reach where you are right now?
Yeah, first of all, hi to everyone, and thank you for this webinar. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. So I've been working in the fashion industry for about 17 years, but actually it happened by chance. I have a humanistic background, and I was looking for a job position by that time. I found that one that sounds pretty interesting because it was in a very international context. And I said, well, I can try, but actually I was not fond of fashion or fashionista or something like that. So I entered tiptoeing, not knowing anything about fashion industry. And honestly, at the beginning, it was a little bit weird because I saw extravagant things created for extravagant people. But above all, I saw prices that were a little bit crazy to me. In my ordinary life, the prices from one piece of a garment of a leather good was corresponding to the salary of a regular worker in Italy. So it was a little bit weird to see that. And I asked myself a lot of questions. And I asked myself if I was doing something right, if it was appropriate to work in that kind of work. But then step by step, I learned better and better that kind of industry and all the people behind the scene, all the things that were happening. And I got a little bit fascinated because there are things that are marvelous in that world. So I started working and working, trying to do my best in my various job positions. And I forgot a little bit, a lot of questions that I had in my mind. That it came the time that I quitted the company and I took a sort of a little sabbatical time. And so that was the time to restart and bring back all those open questions to ask if it's really what I met in that experience was the real life or not, what was positive, what not. And in that time of questioning myself, I met Ashish Kotare that put me in touch with you. And then we started this adventure, and I had the opportunity to dig a little bit more deeper into my mind and my heart and try to, I don't want to say to find the answers, but at least try to find some ways to cope with all those questions.
Right. And it was in your 3rd article that you introduced us to Dario. And
Indeed.
right. And in the context of slow fiber, in the context of alternatives. And Dario, this is fascinating stuff that, someone who moved away from family business was not sort of captured by the family business as a possibility for career, then eventually landed up in the family business after having been a professor of law. So from the comfort, I would say the life of an intellectual is certainly more comfortable than the hurly burly of entrepreneurship. And that too, in these times when, fashion is going through so many different sort of pulls and pressures. So how did you, how were you sort of called into action to get back into your family business?
Yeah, as Alessandra pointed out, I was in totally another sector, and I'm still not, let's say, a fashionista or something really caught by the, let's say, quicker and most innovative and even darker side of fashion. But it's fine because my choice was simply a family choice. So in the sense that when you have a medium enterprise where it's not efficient to separate ownership and management, at some point, someone of the family has to deal with it. So this is the first starting. When I was in the company, so after 15 years of academic career, I realized that what was built by my predecessor, so my grandfather, my father, was a very strong sustainable model. And so I start to study it. So I say how and why we cannot communicate to the final customer, which is not the price, as Alessandra pointed out, but the value of the things that you buy and use. So what's behind a textile products? It's not only expressed, often it's not expressed by the price only, but it's something much deeper. And so I start to studying the vertical integration of my company that comes from the knitting, so from the very starting after the yarn producing, and go up to the final product, also through finishing, cutting, sewing, and the like. We had a very strong link with the territory, so a commitment to maintain and promote the skills and the know-how of the employees. We try to reduce our impact, so we never waste a single dead stock. So we try to recycle and reuse everything. We had a very short supply chain, so in an area of let's say 200 kilometers, we have 85% of our supply. So it was a model that really seems to be designed for a new era of green revolution, if you want. And so I get enthusiastic at this. I start to try to define a little bit this model and to take a very strong direction towards sustainability from the social and environmental side.
Right. And you know, which brings me back to you, Alessandra, that this whole notion of you know, obviously we'll talk about fashion, but it sort of emerges out of our understanding of beauty. And all cultures have had a certain understanding and acceptance of physical beauty. Literature and art have portrayed it with a lot of joy, a lot of panache. And the society has also celebrated physical beauty. But for a very long time, I would say that that idea of physical beauty was always accompanied by the idea of inner beauty. And, you know, so sort of inner beauty, which was rooted in modesty, in simplicity, in righteous behavior, moral behavior, and certain calm in one's own persona, which seems to have been shattered at a certain period in history. And I would say that, you know, that probably is the era of industrialization. And so I was wondering if you could talk about that, and, you know, what were the compulsions which industrialization have forced on society, which sort of formed the first idea of fashion, modern fashion, and then sort of, you know, compulsively added layers and layers to it. And so can you talk about that a bit?
Yes, as you said, in the past, there were some values that you can agree or disagree with that were linked to the ideal of beauty. And the changes that we faced during the history are the ones that brought me to think the key question of the series and of my old connections with you, that is to have or to be. And as you said, we have a very big turning point during the Industrial Revolution for two main reasons, I'd say. The first one is a technical one. So with the creation of the mechanical loom, the industrialization of production, we were able to produce more and more to make a lot of things available to the mass. And this caused two main things. The first one, a sort of reaction of the bourgeoisie. That social class didn't want to be assimilated with the standard population, the lower classes. And therefore, they moved towards a mindset that can be summarized, let me say, with the motto, art for the art's sake. And so beauty became an absolute ideal, emptied by any kind of value, but just linked to a purely aesthetic value. And therefore, this is the first thing where we see a sort of detachment with the past. Beauty is no more compared to purity, inner values, or what else, but it is just an aesthetic aspect and aesthetic features to be pursued at any cost. And indeed, we start also seeing that a lot of people were forced by this kind of culture to take extreme measures to look slender, to look very thin, and also to get closer to sort of androgynous figures that were coming afloat from dandyism, aestheticism, and those kind of movements that were developing under that era. At the same time, as I was saying, that there is a strong technical issue, technical aspect, and that is the mechanical loom. And in that sense, we see what Charles Dickens perfectly depicted in his novels, that is the life of the factory and the bad life of workers in the factory, the exploitation of people working there. And what Dickens described so effectively, far more than me, unfortunately, is what we are seeing also today. Honestly, when we think about exploitation in the factories during the 18th century, we are picturing something that is not that different from what we are seeing today, maybe in Bangladesh or in Vietnam or in other Far Eastern region, where unfortunately regulations and the situation allow companies to not to respect human rights. So this is the first very big turning point where we have a crack in the dimension of the meaning of beauty and also in the industrialization and mass production of fashion. Then I would say that there is another important element that we should consider because it is affecting also our mindset today, and it is colonialism and imperialism. It started in the 16th century, but above all, I would like to focus on what happened on the 18th century. And so it got stronger and stronger. It was a Western colonization of Southern America, Africa, Asia, and we assist to an imposition of a cultural model. Because by that time, also the theories of the race were rising. And so there is a sort of supremacy mindset that pushed Western people to consider them better than other people. And so they're willing to subjugate them, to modify their life, worse, to consider them as objects. And this translated also in the slave trade. So slavery is a consequence of this sort of supremacy that the Western people thought to have by that time. And this is a pretty big issue that brought us consequences also today, because it started to spread the Western model as the only ideal standard to pursue in order to feel beautiful. So also nowadays, unfortunately, a lot of people that do not have from the birth the physical characteristics of Western people are struggling through surgery or to cosmetics or other ways to modify their bodies in order to mirror the expectation of the Western world. And so, yes, I think these are the two key historical moments where we can identify a big shift from the past, where also the ideal of beauty was not so perfect and it caused, in any case, marginalization and problems. But from that moment onward, the crack was bigger and stronger.
Right. Dario, do you think you were conscious of, you were obviously aware of what your grandfather was doing in terms of a very, very sophisticated understanding of, a business model which was very different from what was surrounding you. But were you aware of this complicated nature of relationship between society and fashion and the idea of beauty when you got into your business? And was that in any way a burden on you? And were you sort of prepared to deal with that challenge?
I was totally unprepared, and I'm still, I think, because what my grandfather did was basically to focus on quality, so on products. And so we have, and we are a leader in our little niche, so tubular knitting for underwear in natural fibers. But what was interesting for me is that this focus on products show me how the system was going into totally another direction. So in the sense that the louder you speak and the more you are credible and trustable according to the final customers. And sometimes this goes together with greenwashing, no? Because I have money to invest not in the products, but in everything that is not the products, and so I can communicate and the like. And so seeing this, I immediately realized that my strategy should have been to keep this very high quality focus on quality on one side, and so to keep all what I found here, and to another level to explain more and more in a very let's say intellectually honest way how was our philosophy. So the idea of having a product that is not only beautiful, if you like it, because beauty obviously is a totally subjective concept, but it's beautiful because it is done in a certain way. So because what is behind the production, so behind the veil or the curtain of beauty, is respectful both for environment, people, and the like. And so I saw that giving these two pillars in a very simply and transparent way, but very clear way, products and philosophy, so our idea of what should be the textile production, we found out that the final customer becomes more and more loyal and trust the brand more and more. And this allows us to survive in this crazy world, very fast, very, let's say, very focused on whatever is not products. And now we are really having some little success out of it, in the sense that we are going to a much younger target. The target is very, very loyal. So even if our products last forever, they try to buy much less and much higher quality, and they comes back every time. And there's really an interest around us that makes me happy, because towards this little, let's say, strategy, I really want to properly define a model. But I think this is the right way, without any money for communication, for big advertising or nothing, just to being very clear through my commercial network, so my agents, my shops that are our clients and the like, and the final consumer when we go directly through the e-commerce. But this turned to be very, very, very satisfying and very successful for us so far.
Right. So I want to pick up from where you pick up this idea of advertising, of communication, and how that sort of accompanied Alessandra, the post-war period, and how society got enmeshed in this, sort of mad desire for beauty and fashion, which was being sort of imposed upon the society by a very few people who were part of the advertising industry, who were part of the fashion industry. And then it was overtaken completely by the finance industry, I mean, the finance capital. And so this whole period from the early 50s, the early post-war period, the early post-colonial period, till the 80s was this, sort of surfeit of advertising, etc. And post 80s, it turned into this, mad rush of creation of oligopolies, bigger companies buying up smaller companies and sort of devouring them and sort of becoming these conglomerates. And so in this entire process, where do we find beauty? Is there any sense of beauty in this whole paradigm that we've seen and we've gone through, and in fact we are going through right now? What do you think of beauty and fashion as you look back at those periods?
But I think, as I try to point out in my little article, that the most part of what we call now beauty and people search and seek for as beautiful really bring a destructive side, in the sense that it's a beauty made up on or built up on overexploitation of resources, natural resources, and human beings. And so for me, this kind of beauty is not interesting, and to be really honest, should be unveiled and challenged. So we try to redefine beauty on a very simple words that try to express what is behind the products or what is embedded in the products. So the idea of saying, and we use this very simple, let's say, payoff that becomes also a little bit a mission, no, for Slow Fiber. So the idea of following a beauty and define beautiful only what is also done in a certain way. So what is also good, healthy, clean, fair, and durable. And each of these words define a very precise, let's say, way of doing things. So a very clear values and a very clear step in the textile production. And our idea is that through this new concept of beauty, we can really do something new, or better, we can really challenge what went wrong with the colonialism, imperialism, now the capitalism, as Alessandra explained very well. Simply going into a little bit deepening the idea, we put in the word good, and so we think that beauty must be good. What is the industrial model? So the idea of having a very strong link between the industry and the territory with his own know-how, skills, keeping a supply chain in a proper way, so paying in the correct way your suppliers, but also partnering with them. And so trying even to move from a very high competitive environment to a more collaborating one. And in this idea, probably we study too much the animal world and less the vegetal world. That is much more collaborative and less competitive. Then we define as healthy what includes the all the use of chemical substances along the supply chain that is in this textile sector is very, very important, and most of the times is not expressed or is not transparent. Clean, obviously, is our continuous and daily commitment to reduce our environmental footprint. For example, in my company here, we put photovoltaic implantation to self-produce energy. We have a geothermal implantation to save gas. And so we try in the packaging, in every single passage, to reduce our footprint. Fair is whatever is linked to human resources, to working condition, safety and health standards in the workplace, freedom of association and decent wage, and whatever is linked to the people that are involved in the supply chain. And at the end, durable or lasting is something that it's an effort to define what is a quality product. So a product that doesn't become waste too early or too fast, because the biggest problem we have in textile is the waste, the fact that we produce more than the double of what really we need. So we have to slow down to, again, consume much less and much better.
Alessandra, you know, when Dario talks about slow fiber, the journey that we've taken to reach this place has also been through some really, very, very sort of exciting, interesting, thought-provoking, and change-inducing times. And when you look back at, ideas which came through the feminist movement, the ideas which came through the civil rights movement, which were always sort of looking at not just the socio-economic aspects of the society and its challenges. They were also looking at beauty. They were also looking at the body. And so looking back, do you think, where we've reached today, we've done justice to the ideals of those movements?
Well, this is a very interesting question. I think that the values that Dario just shared with us are very disruptive, because honestly, they do not mirror the majority of what we are seeing today. So it's not the standard mindset. Why I'm saying this? Because a lot of fashion brands are not thinking like that. A lot of brands that are saying they would like to do that, they're not walking the talk. But this is a very ancient heritage, let me say, because as you were underlying a few minutes ago, in the decades of the world wars, we have a very interesting paradox to be analyzed, and it is matching also with the liberation movement you were talking about. So we had a pivotal role of women during the First and Second World War. They were very key in the economic of their countries, and in the meantime, they were also managing their households and the families and everything. But they also took the role of the men that were in the battlefields by that time. So they have an educational and family role, a business role. The fashion industry drifted a little bit, proposing a kind of garments that were more suitable for working. This allowed women to start reclaiming their rights, their human rights, their social rights. And so, for example, the suffragette movement started by that time. But at the same time, the paradox was that even if women were so strong, so empowered by that time, at the same time, they were subjugated by the male vision. The society, in any case, was dominated by male mindset. So we can probably talk about man gaze that conditioned women. And what is, in my opinion, very terrible was that during the World Wars period, women were considered objects because they were pushed because of this kind of mindset to look charming, to be sexy, to dress in order to be desired by their men, especially when they came back from war, and they were used as a sort of prize for them. And so this is really a paradox that it's difficult to cope with, because we have a very strong independent women, but at the same time, they were considered and they needed or wanted, so it's difficult to say, to act like objects. And this is a mindset that also today is still very present. Everything that we see, that we have been seeing from that time till today, is conditioned by a societal imprinting, but this imprinting is driven by man desire, man mindset, man willing. And so women are not independent in their choices, in what they will like to do, but they are conditioned by what they are expected to do by their boyfriends or husbands or what else. So this is a big issue that we're still struggling with. It's not, in my opinion, it's not solved yet. And what is paradoxical is that this kind of beauty, the objectification and commodification of beauty, was more and more pushed through, for example, the figure of the pinup that emerged in the late 40s, 50s, but also a little bit before, because they used female figures to have men to go to the army, to convince them to go to the army through advertisement that was represented by this kind of women. And also the beauty pageants were more and more popular immediately after the World War. This is an issue not because you can't show your body or you don't have to be proud of your body and your beauty, but because there is so much pressure, and we see that also the physical and mental health of women started to struggle with these constraints. The use and the abuse of drugs and alcohol, for example, to cope with the pressure of the pageants, started by that time. So it was a very significant moment that reached the hype in the 80s with the supermodel cultures. The 80s were particularly relevant because we assist also to an economic drift. So we have the neoliberalism that was pushed at maximum level. Everything was looking for profit. The financial capital was the king of the arena. And what happened is also that fashion, that before maybe could be talked about as artisanal, with a lot of craftsmanship, a lot of people working with creativity and imagining new products, became something industrial. We are talking about the shareholders, the industrialization of fashion. And so money took the place of quality, creativity, small companies that were working maybe according to the ideals that Dario was highlighting. And so it was very, very difficult to struggle with this kind of pressure. And by that time, we saw Naomi Campbell, Kate Moss, Cindy Crawford. So that the supermodels era was really a very high level that pushed regular women, ordinary women, to gym, to surgery, to dieting, and everything. So also there's a sort of commodification of health. And I think it has been very tough for women struggle with this kind of models, this kind of society. You always feel uncomfortable. Whenever you don't match with those ideals, you are not only not comfortable, but also blamed by the others, especially by men gaze. So yeah, these two moments were particularly tough for the bodies of the women.
Right. So Dario, your company manufactures something, very, very intimate, apparel, which is very intimate, undergarments, and even that has, the most seductive pressure that you can think of in terms of advertising, for instance, Victoria's Secret. And so when I contrast that with your company's products, how should I sort of think about your company and think about your company as the future of the intimate apparel? And how should I convince myself that, what is being done by the Victoria's Secret model can be countered by what you're doing? Can you sort of, give me some idea as to, how should I look at it?
It was fun because just some weeks ago, no, sorry, some months ago, before Christmas, we host a group of professors and researchers from German university, and some of them criticized our image, saying that for them was not inclusive for all the type of body. And this is right, because I think if you take my products in a simple way, so the single products, it is designed to be very comfortable, seasonless, and long-lasting, because seasonless is one of our most important pillar. So we have half of the collection that is, we call it timeless, in the sense that must be very minimal in style, and so shouldn't be, let's say, linked to any trends. But the problem, as you underline, Pallav, is that the market asks still for a sexy image. And as Alessandra explained very well, and you quoted Victoria's Secret, and but other brands as well, this demand is always on the market. And so sometimes we need to make some picture in this way, and you can, if you surf our website, you can find them, together with other type of pictures. But at the end of the day, I didn't find a solution to be really inclusive and meeting all the expectation of the market, because when you take this side, you miss and you are probably, let's say, forgetting an ideal of inclusion. We have all the sizing, our knitwear is very, very stretched. So I think from the functional point of view, it's all perfect, but the image is a problem. So how do you shoot? No, how do you propose? Because we try also to make a different, we always make different ethnics in the models and the like. But when you go to different bodies, it's very difficult, because normally there are single, let's say, not tribu, but single like niche or really sector. So if you are in this sector, you won't use another type of image, and vice versa. And so you have to choose among the two. But we are not in the position now, because of our market request and expectations, to take a proper solution. So I don't have a solution. It's a big problem. We pose this problem every time. But it's true that, as Alessandra pointed out, that is not a problem of, it's not the product in itself, it's not the functionality of the comfortableness of the comfort of the single products, but it's how you express it, how do you shoot it, how do you propose it on the market. That sometimes is still, for me, an old-fashioned way, but it's dominant yet.
So we will be going into our question and answer session, but before that, I want to ask you very briefly, from your vantage point, looking back at your experience, both of you, Alessandra and Dario, when you look back at where you've reached, you look back at the path you took to where you've reached, what does the future look like? What promise does future hold? And where do you think the challenges will come? Alessandra, you first.
Well, this is a very difficult question. I will start with a wish. I don't know if it is realistic. It will happen really, but I think that the future should be a future of self-awareness and acceptance. This means that you don't have to give up to fashion. You can still be a fashion person. You can buy fashion. You can look the artistic side of fashion. You can enjoy it, appreciate everything that is behind the scene of that world. But you need to walk a path to find a sort of inner peace, a sort of balance. You need to be self-aware. You need not to be afraid of judgment. You need to make peace with yourself, first of all. And this will allow you to be in a mood of acceptance. Acceptance, first of all, of yourself, but also of others, of all the differences. Because Dario was talking about inclusion. Today, my feeling is that inclusion sometimes is a word that is exploited for marketing reason and is not a real inclusion. Therefore, I really wish that we will be able to accept everybody, to value people for what they are, not to have such a big pressure to cope with standards. And I would say, referring to the interview that Giulia Paganelli released me, to escape the cage of beauty, because in many occasions, beauty is a cage. And we need to treat our bodies as homes, but not as temples. So I thank Giulia for these references, but I think they are very strong to highlight what I wish we will be able to do. What the future will be in reality, probably we will have a sort of polarization. So part of the world will go this way I've just described, and another part will be still very focused on profit and appearance. It is a matter of choice, and we are here for accept everything, but I hope that reason, heart, and mind will enlighten us a little bit more than today.
Dario, what about you? How do you
So
look
I
at the
think
future?
the challenge are really real and not only intellectual. But as Alessandra pointed out, we think every day I have this two feeling according to what happens in the day. So on one side, I'm very, let's say, happy and positive because people that likes a certain model, a certain philosophy are more and more involved in changing their habits. And so, for example, we put in our, very simply, in our new boxes, all our, these are in Italian, but you can easily translate it in English, our values, and this turned to be a very strong project that was accepted by our target. On the other way, I think there will be always a mainstream against, but I'm sure of one thing. Sometimes the discussion is polarized, make a polarization between production and consuming model. According to me, the key secrets and what we are trying to do in Slow Fiber as a movement, as a network of enterprise, of factories, is that we cannot change one without the other. So we can, and nobody cannot say, oh, I will wait for the industry to change before I change my consuming habits, or the other way around. I cannot change as an industry because I have to wait that the consumer, let's say, accept a higher price, for example, higher sustainability content, and a higher value of the products. We need to take our risks and to change. And so I think there will be some problems, but we are very, very confident that at least half of the world will be with us.
Excellent. Thank you very much, both of you. And Pooja, let's dive straight into questions. We're already running a little behind. So
Yes.
I will encourage everybody to ask their questions, if possible, on the screen. If you're not comfortable, it's absolutely fine to just send the questions or even ask them on the audio without the visuals being on. Go ahead, Pooja.
All right, yes. So as Pallav said, we have time for some questions now. So I think we've got a couple from Ashish. Ashish, would you like to come off unmute?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. This was a fascinating discussion. Too short. I would have loved to hear Alessandra and Dario much more. It's a subject I know very little about, so a lot of learning here. My question well, they're both related, is basically that if we look at, certainly in India, probably everywhere across the world, what we are now saying is ecologically conscious, fair, inclusive, and so on and so forth, socially just and so on, all of which is absolutely justified in claiming that, also tends to be much more affordable to the rich than to the poor. And this is true for food, it's true for textiles, it's true for a lot of stuff. And so the poor are condemned to still wear polyester or eat junk food because that's cheaper. That's the way our economy is. What do you think is the way out of this paradox? So could one of it also be much more decentralization of production and of the relations between producers and consumers, or other ways in which you can think this paradox can be resolved? Thanks.
Alessandra,
Yeah.
any ideas?
What Ashish has just told is so dramatically true that I dare say that nothing can be considered sustainable if it creates a social gap. So sustainability, like fashion or beauty, quality food, quality dresses, and so on, can't be a niche, can't be something for rich people. They should be for everybody. If you are not able to propose them to everybody, you can define yourself sustainable. You are on the way to, but you still need to work and find also economic sustainability. That doesn't mean only economic sustainability for your company, but also for people that will use your products or services. Then just to be a little bit more concrete, what can we do? Probably, in my opinion, we can shorten the value chain. Probably if we start to produce a little bit more locally and also in a more conscious way that will reduce overproduction and overconsumption, if we can generate a more circular model that doesn't mean recycling what you throw away, but is a mindset. So probably we can reduce prices. Maybe we need to forget and give up to have something. I don't know, maybe I take the example of food. We won't be able to have avocados in Italy at any time of the year. We need to give up on maybe eating apples because they are grown locally. But I think this should be a positive way to go. And it's not protectionism. I don't want to say that we need autarky or something like that. We just need to review the long chains, shorten them, and be more respectful of the resources we use. So that, and last but not the least, also maybe give up a little bit of the margins. So we need to gain money. We deserve to be paid, of course, but maybe this needs to be a little bit less extreme than what is happening today. We see what is happening in fashion industry. They are facing a bad period because they raised too much prices. It's one of the reasons. So yeah, I guess supply chains, prices, and the respect of the local community could be some solutions, some ways to be investigated, at least.
Dario, what do you say? Because
Actually,
I do have one quotation from you. It says that beauty can't be at the expense of anything or anyone. But the larger question is, are you willing to give up on your margins?
yeah, I agree with Alessandra that we don't need. I mean, today the capitalism is not about margin, but is and growth in a, let's say, in a fair way or fair concept. But it's about depriving some people from whatever they have and enriching some other. So all the economics is going to steal something at the poorest level and to give more and more at the richest, very, very little niche of exploiters. So this is the famous Bertolt Brecht comedian sentence, you are rich because I'm poor. So this should be totally over. And so I agree with Ashish, and normally I reply, I answer to this objection that is very, very fundamental, to say, first of all, in a Western situation, everybody must do his own revolution at his her possibilities. So it's true that most of the people cannot do nothing, okay, because they cannot afford a better way of producing the final products of a sustainable chain. And this is fine. It's not a problem. But if the richest start, things will change. Imagine that in California, the fire in California outlines that 1% of people living there make the environmental footprint of 30% of the world population, No, so in the Western world, to be honest, what happens in Europe is that even the middle class basically change their consuming habit. So it's fine to have a telephone that costs an incredible amount. It's fine to make a trip or spend in entertainment activities without limits. But when you go to textile, they must be cheap. So this can change. I don't know in India, obviously, because but I think this is a common excuse that we found in the middle class everywhere across the world. So what we save, on textile, but we really discharge the cost in the environment and on some people away from us, it's spent. No, it's used in another activity that is normally useless or pure entertainment. I think that's what I can say. And no, the last things, maybe, Ashish, is that, for example, my company was compelled to raise the price in the last 2 years because of inflation, but just because of financial speculation on energy and raw materials. So sometimes we are really exposed, and we cannot face alternatives because the financial speculation on every sector of our lives, from insurance to raw material to energy, is so aggressive and so strong that we are frustrated, and we feel really weak and let's say powerless.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are almost reaching the hour, but I had one question. And so, Dario, you mentioned that there needs to be change both, in the production model and consumption model too. And like as consumers, we should have a more conscious relationship and with fashion and products and really know the story. But I'm also wondering if like there's this third element of like not just individual action, but also collective large-scale action and action as citizens, not just as consumers. So I'm thinking like, what do you think needs to change on that front? Whether it can be like, say, something like the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, which is holding, big companies responsible. So yeah, what do you think about collective action? And are you seeing this happening in Italy and Europe?
On one side, I should say that I cannot wait to see slow fiber growing abroad. So I would really like in a few years to see a slow fiber in India, no, an autonomous group of producers that share these values and this vision, and it can create a group there, and then we link, as Slow Food did, because Slow Food is developed almost everywhere in the world. On the consuming side, Alessandra said a very interesting thing that I always agree. So you are right, Pooja, that boycotting some fast fashion model, some really unsustainable products, it's fine. But going locally, I'm sure we can find something much better than the globalization and standardization offer us. And one tricky things and funny things, if you want, I always say at the end of my presentation is to say, it would be fun for every single consumer to ask the story behind a product. So if there is a story behind, so if you can tell me how it is done from the fiber to the final garment, so through dyeing, knitting, spinning, and the like, it deserves to be bought. If there's not a story, probably something must be hid, and so it's better not to buy. So even if the consumer simply apply this funny way of consuming, things will change a lot, because the shock will be immediately felt by the industry, so by the producing side. And so I think we have to act on both sides, and association is fundamental at both levels.
Alessandra?
Thank you.
Yes,
Alessandra?
I fully agree with what Dario said, and I would link my answer to the story issue. Stories are the basis of communities. So I think that not as consumers, but as a collective, a community, we can act according to stories. So we have the example, for example, of fashion revolution. That is a movement risen from Rana Plaza tragedy. And then it was spread all over the world. And fashion revolution is spreading some values. And they asked, who made my clothes? So it is a right question to be spread as a community. And I think that, so fashion revolution was a little bit of a beginner, the opener of this kind of movements. But today, in a certain way, also thanks to the social networks and things like that, we are facing a sort of trend that is moving from overconsumption and is evaluating, for example, visible mending as a new way to be proud of mending your old garments because they value. We have the book of Ursula de Castro that is called Loved Clothes Last. So it's very emblematic as a title. I think a lot of local communities are moving around these topics. In my personal experience, I can say here in Lugano, I'm collaborating with a social tailoring that is promoting conscious fashion and is upcycling, mending, revisiting fashion. So I think, as you said, Pooja, communities have a lot of power to change things. And the more we are, the more sensitive we get, the more it's easy to change things, to make, as Dario always says, a gentle revolution.
Right. So, Pooja, are there any other questions?
No
Shall
other
we-
questions, but just a comment from Ashish, who said that there is like,
Yeah.
a lot of principles and practices which are, like embodying the spirit of slow fiber, but they are just not called
Right.
that in India. And I'm sure this is the case across various regions and geographies. And there is a
Yeah.
need to connect them and really, have this space where, we're able to celebrate this slow but surely emerging, movement.
Yeah, we should certainly introduce some of our Vikalp Sangam colleagues who are doing textile to Dario and Alessandra, and perhaps start some kind of a dialogue there.
Yeah.
Also because
Like-
slow food, so sorry, Pooja. Slow food is a network model. So you will be autonomous in setting your association there with our obviously philosophy, our manifesto, no, if we share the same values, but
Right.
it's not so difficult, but because we know there are everywhere in the world very, very ethical and virtuous industries. The only thing is that we were born, we are just 2 years old, so we are a little baby. And so we start from our from Italy just because it was easy also to define the KPI for each single words and the like. And so slowly we want to go ahead and to disseminate our idea. And if it is shared, it will be really an honor to have a. And my personal wish was really to start from Africa and India, that were the places maybe where you have to challenge harder the textile colonialism. And where the textile colonialism made the worst things ever. So it will be really fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you, both of you. It's been such a pleasure to have been in touch with you, interacting with you, engaging with you, and now finally culminating in this webinar. And hopefully this is just the beginning of another chapter. Thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
again. Thank you.
Thank you.